Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Great to have you with us. Talking about possible challenge to John Boehner's leadership as Speaker of the House. Jan Bryan, who is our call screener, telling me that we've had numerous phone calls in the last segment from people that actually tried to call their representative, and they got sent to a dead-end box. I mean, the calls are just being kind of buried, and I don't know what happens to those messages, if anybody listens to them, if anybody retrieves them. But I'm guessing you've got a lot of members of the House of Representatives. They are ducking for cover. They're heading for the tall grass. They're looking for a hidey hole somewhere, especially those 85 Republicans that voted for this monstrosity. They do not want to be found. I got a Gallup poll here in front of me. 50% of the American people believe that the best years of the United States are past. Just 47% believe our best years are still to come. Now, I would say that if it were not for the same God that came to the rescue of Judah in the days of Nehemiah, the 50% would be right, that our best days are behind us and gone. But remember, Nehemiah prayed to the great and awesome God, the God of heaven. If he could revive the nation of Judah, which was empty, they had no people, they had no national defense. They had no law enforcement. They had no morale. They had no spiritual life. They had no temple. They had no place of worship. They were completely destroyed, basically, as a nation. God brought them back. The God of heaven, the great and awesome God, can do it again. I came across, going back to the Christmas season, just for a moment, here's a piece by Tom Bloomer on Newsbusters talking about news coverage. This is not advertisers now, because we take care of that end, looking at advertisers. This is news stories. And what Bloomer, this is the 8th year he's done this, what he found out is that when the mainstream media talks about shopping, it's the holiday season. 91.5% of the time, when they talk about shopping, it's the holiday season. Only 8.5% of the time does the mainstream media use the word Christmas. But when it comes to layoffs, when it comes to a slumping economy, when it comes to people being fired, when it comes to people being homeless, when it comes to people not being able to find a job, they use the word Christmas. 25% of the time, only 75% of the time do they use holiday. So what they want, what the mainstream media is, they want people to associate the word Christmas with pain. The word Christmas means no jobs. It means people being laid off. It means people being unable to find work. So the nauseating bias of the mainstream media continues unabated. And before we go back to the sound bites and phones, here's a great, first of all, here is a paper that is published in Astronomy and Astrophysics. Okay, so this is not some kind of lightweight, fly-by-night. This is a scientific publication, Astronomy and Astrophysics. The paper they've published shows, now what we said from the very beginning is the main thing that drives global temperatures is what? It is the sun. It is the sun. The sun is the sole source of heat that we have. So it's going to be the main driver of global temperatures. We've said that from the very beginning. A first grader can figure that thing out. And now this Astronomy and Astrophysics paper says that solar activity at the end of the 20th century was near the highest levels of the past 11,500 years. So you want an explanation for why temperatures increased toward the end of the 20th century? There it is. It's got nothing to do with CO2. It has everything to do with the sun. Who would have thought? Who would have suspected that an increase in solar activity could be linked to an increase in global temperatures? But there it is, ladies and gentlemen. The Astronomy and Astrophysics peer-reviewed publication says so. And here is Charlie Daniels. Here's our global warming quote for the day. I will take global warming seriously when Al Gore flies commercial, rides a bicycle, and moves into a one-bedroom condo. Charlie Daniels, that is the quote of the day. Now let's grab a couple of sound bites real quick before we take a couple of phone calls. Here's President Obama. This is clip 6. Here's President Obama. This is right after he got a $620 billion tax increased the deficit by $3.9 trillion. And here's what I want you to hear, ladies and gentlemen. It was not enough for Barack Obama. This is not the end of the deal. This is not the end of the train. He is just getting warmed up. He just played the entire House of Representatives for chumps, for saps, and now he's going to ask for more. And how do the Republicans have any moral credibility to stop him? Here's President Obama spiking the football after the vote last night.
As I've demonstrated throughout the past several weeks, I am very open to compromise. I agree with Democrats and Republicans that the aging population and the rising cost of health care makes Medicare the biggest contributor to our deficit. I believe we've got to find ways to reform that program without hurting seniors who count on it to survive. And I believe that there's further unnecessary spending in government that we can eliminate. But we can't simply cut our way to prosperity. Cutting spending has to go hand in hand with further reforms to our tax code so that the wealthiest corporations and individuals can't take advantage of loopholes and deductions that aren't available to most Americans. And we can't keep cutting things like basic research and new technology and still expect to succeed in a 21st century economy. So we're going to have to continue to move forward in deficit reduction, but we have to do it in a balanced way, making sure that we are growing even as we get a handle on our spending. Now, one last point I want to make. While I will negotiate over many things, I will not have another debate with this Congress over whether or not they should pay the bills that they've already racked up through the laws that they passed.
So that's President Obama spiking the football. When he talks about reforms to our tax code, that means one thing, an increase in taxes. Again, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, he's just getting warmed up. You know, the Republicans think they can breathe a sigh of relief. It's done. We've frozen tax increases. We've given President Obama all that he wanted. Now we can focus on spending cuts. Forget about it. I mean, President Obama is just getting started, and he just told us so last night. We simply can't cut our way to prosperity. So he's saying we're done dealing with tax rates. We're done with that. We're all finished with that. We've got to find a way to raise more money. Cutting spending has to go, and we're done with that. Cutting spending has to go hand in hand with further reforms to our tax code so that the wealthiest corporations and individuals can't take advantage of loopholes. So he's going after the upper income earners. He's just getting warmed up. He hasn't stopped taking a slice out of the hide of upper income Americans and the wealthiest corporations. He says we have to do it in a balanced way. We just saw what that meant. That's President Obama's definition of balance. $1 in cuts for every $41 in spending in tax increases. And he's saying on the debt ceiling, I will not have another debate with Congress over the debt ceiling. Not going to do it. Not negotiable. I'm not going to any compromises. Last time, this fiscal cliff, the sequestration, that was all a part of negotiating with the Republicans over the debt ceiling. Not going to do it again. Pat Toomey out there saying, hey, we got to have a shutdown. Debt ceiling is a place where we got some leverage. I'm saying, man, Senator Toomey, I will believe it when I see it. And by the way, Sean Hannity reporting that John Boehner may resign tonight as Speaker. And I think that, to me, would be a logical and maybe inevitable choice. Here's Sandra Levin. Speaking of the fact they're just getting warmed up, Sandra Levin led the debate for the Democrats last night on the floor, and he's saying we're not done raising taxes on the American people.
I just don't want the chairman's statement that this settles permanently how much revenue will be made available. The president has made clear there has to be a balanced approach, and no one should be misled into thinking otherwise. No one.
We got to raise taxes. And, you know, the New York Times had a piece out saying we got to raise taxes on the middle class. New York Times coming out even before this thing was voted on. We've got to raise taxes on the middle class. Raising taxes on the wealthy, we've talked about this. It's going to fund government for like 10 days. That's it. So this tax increase they just passed, that's going to fund government for 10 days. So they have to go after middle class. That means they're coming after you and me, ladies and gentlemen, for more taxes. Let's grab a couple of phone calls. Let's go to Frank in Conway, Arkansas. Frank, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Well, thank you for taking my call, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Just a couple of points. I think some of those folks that voted for this thing may have sold their soul, and it's kind of hard to buy that back if you didn't know it. So I think they need to take a notice of that. One thing about the president, I spoke about him a lot earlier. Years ago, my granddad told me about a couple of guys was training their dog because they like to see dogs fight. To say sick 'em, they meant come here. When they said come here, they meant sick 'em. And so your president and our president does that on every occasion he can. What he says he will do is just the opposite. And
yeah, because, and you're right about that, Frank. He always talks about we got to get spending under control. We got to do something about the deficit. We got to cut spending. Got to live within our means, and then never does anything about it. All right, Frank, I appreciate it. Let's see. Let's grab Rosemarie, Chattanooga. Rosemarie, I got 20 seconds. Can you tell me what's on your mind in 20 seconds? Rosemarie, are you with me?
Yes, I am,
Yes.
Brian. Thank you so much for the good work that you're doing. I did contact my congressman and ask them to vote against Boehmer tonight, replace the toothless wonder with someone that will do the job. And I believe that this president is the useful anvil that God is using to judge our country. If I ran the government the way our government does, I would be in jail.
You're exactly right, Rosemarie. Well, listen, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And again, Hannity reporting that Boehner may resign tonight. Here's your blessing as we begin 2013. May you go out in joy and be led forth in peace. Never forget, ladies and gentlemen, there's a God in heaven. We're fighting a winnable war.
The views and